Hey everybody, Dave Lindbergh in Hong Kong with another episode of THD Podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. Today we've got a company that does Alexa type RF modules, a company called Libre Wireless. So we're going to find out all about that and what makes them unique. But before we go too far, let's not forget about ALTI. They've got an event coming up in Vegas on June 5th, 6th at the South Point Hotel and Casino. So there's a promo code there, so you can use that to get free access to the event. So please take a look at that and let's get into it. So Simon joining us from Japan. How are you doing today, Simon?
Good, thanks.
All right. And Scott Steinberg, commercial director for Libre Wireless, joining us from the UK. How are you, Scott?
Good, thank you. Good to be involved and good to chat with you guys.
All right. So, yeah, Libre's been around for some time. And I think, Scott, you've been involved in RF for ages. So, maybe we want to get into a quick presentation and tell us about Libre.
Yes. So Libra Wireless is probably, kind of 9-10 years old now. But we originally kind of cut our teeth back in 16, 17 years ago when we were Bridgeco and we were pioneering streaming audio and working very closely with the likes of Apple and companies such as that. But, Libre in its latest form is kind of like 9-10 years old. So we're essentially a technology company. We design and manufacture wireless streaming modules, not only for audio, but also for IoT devices these days. Okay. And this kind of captures the different segments that we work in, kind of the connected smart home space, audio, obviously, wireless, appliances and white goods, telcos, a lot of healthcare and medical, security surveillance, toys, wearables, etc. Anything where, it's got a connected device these days, connecting to the cloud, to another device or to players in the ecosystem.
Are you talking about Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, just Wi-Fi or any
Bluetooth, Wi-Fi? Basically, we support, all the different solutions out there, and, whether it be LE or full Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 6G, Wi-Fi, 11, we literally cover the whole spectrum of different capabilities. We're kind of known pretty much for, scalable embeddable solutions. We do apps at a company that, we've got complete reference designs. We pretty much a turnkey solution, for brands, whether it be an audio company or an IoT company that wants to launch a product. We can pretty much take them through the whole process.
Okay, got it.
We're a US-based company. Our headquarters are in California, but more and more of our business has kind of shifted east and also India. We've got a big R&D team of about 95, 100 people based in Bangalore. And then we've got a small satellite office in Shenzhen and also in Nanjing in China, where we do a lot of the our embedded programs with the factories. And then based in Europe, we've got a small sales team. Mm-hmm. We work with all the leading kind of ecosystem players. We're a licensed system integrator, for all the key ones you'd expect: Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft. Not such a big player in this space anymore. And then in China, the up and coming services. I say up and coming. They're huge services, but only really relevant in China, such as iFlyTech and Tencent. And then we also work quite closely with kind of more customized services across Europe. And there are more and more services that are coming on that don't rely on Apple and don't rely on Google, such as Turkcell and Salma in India. And, so we do a lot of custom programs with these kind of satellite companies. And let's go straight into our kind of solutions and what we offer. So essentially, we do kind of like a good, better, and best when it comes to streaming, modules. And to be clear, what is a module? So this is a device that will enable you to connect to the internet and stream all these music services and that most kind of customers want these days. Everyone's heard of Spotify, everyone's heard of Alexa, Apple streaming their content, and we facilitate that by designing, developing, and providing a turnkey solution that could be dropped slot into that product and facilitate that. And then we have, depending on the size of the product, if you've got a really small form factor product, you may go for something like our Mavid range, which is shown at the bottom of this presentation, which measures 11 mils by 11 mils as a chip, going up to our LS10 module, which we like to call it. It's, it's like the Swiss Army knife of modules. I mean, it does everything. It supports, it supports Amazon Alexa, AirPlay 2, Spotify Hi-Fi, Cast, Deezer, Roon, pretty much everything that you could throw at it and want to put into a speaker or into a hi-fi system. So depending on what your application is, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, just so people watching understand kind of the people that would be implementing things, the delta and the reason to pursue a module where you've got a complete Wi-Fi radio and controller, but then also the software and the relationship with the people like Spotify, all embedded and licensed onto a single solution, is a massive step forward in your product development rather than trying to do all those things independently. So that's kind of one of the big things that people should understand is you guys are solving all those problems in one step.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and there's a lot of heavy lifting involved. Just the certifications. I mean, let's take, for example, Google, wanting to work with Google, and to implement Cast, for example. You've got to fit out product forms. You've got to then put it in front of Google. It's got to be approved. That process can take 3 months on its own. And that's literally just the approval process before you can even start the product development. Then it's got to go through the testing. And the same applies for Spotify. The same applies for Amazon, MRM, their multi-room. What's great is that we have 17 years of experience, 18 years of experience of working with these tech companies, and to become a system integrator, it is a difficult thing. I mean, we are a gold system integrator with quite a few of these. And what that basically means is that, they trust us with their SDK. They know that we know what we're doing. And then, in the likes of Spotify Hi-Fi, we actually certify the product on behalf of Spotify, which is great, because we work so closely with them. And if you're an individual brand and you wanted to let's say, for example, do a Sonos type product, a streaming product that supports these services, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to be able to do that. We offer the complete turnkey solution. We have relationships with all the streaming ecosystem players, and we work with them on a daily basis, and we can troubleshoot if there's problems, and there always are. Anyone who wants to launch an audio product knows that you start off with with an ID, and you say, look, it's going to take us 8, 10 months, 12 months to develop this product, and we're going to have problems on the way, but we will resolve them. And the great thing about Libra Wireless is that we know what we have so much experience and so many previous test cases here where we've developed these things that we can foresee what the problems are going to be. I mean, going back in the day with Apple AirPlay, I mean, I remember the testing labs, and it's still the case now. The product is put on a disc in Apple's lab, and it rotates 360 degrees, and they're checking to make sure that that the connection, because it's all about user experience at the end of the day. And if you're the likes of Spotify or Apple or whoever it wants to be, and if you're going to allow your service to be streamed on, whatever the brand is, a Harman speaker or a Tivoli speaker, you want to make sure it works properly and the user gets a perfect experience. Because if they don't, it's bad for the streaming service. It's bad publicity to them. So it's vital that the solution not only works, but works to the best it can be. And you don't get to be accredited with the likes of the service providers that we've just talked about without being best in class. So for us, that's really important. Sorry, okay. I can go on about this, but there's a lot of work involved in delivering these products.
Right.
Yeah. So for the most part, it sounds like we're talking about audio streaming services. And so that means you're using one of those, like a Spotify, AirPlay, whatever it might be, and you're streaming the data from your Wi-Fi to your speakers, whatever it is. Is that the format? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, so effectively how it works is that the module, talks to the cloud, the server in the cloud, and it pulls down it doesn't come to the usual device as a controller, whether that be an iPhone or a tablet or
whatever, and then that becomes a controller, and the content's coming straight directly from Spotify's cloud, directly to the speaker. So that will happen seamlessly.
Yeah. And what does the structure of one of these systems look like? I mean, apart from the module, what else have you got? You've got amplifier and speakers. You've got a module. Do you have a host controller? Do you have other bits?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it depends on what the application is. Further in the presentation, there's a few examples. I mean, we've just completed in shipping a product for Sharp in Japan, where it's a neckband headphone and a neckband headset rather than it sits on your neck, and it's been a very successful product with Sharp for a couple of years as a Bluetooth headset. We put our Mavid chip in there. We've actually done a chip down design for Sharp, where because it's such a small footprint, and that streams now that does Alexa. And you literally just talk to it. So depending on the application, but yes, you can, you can have if it's a headset, it's going to have different requirements to if it's a full-blown amplifier that we do for Pioneer or Onkyo, something like that. Each product will either have with or without Wi-Fi. I mean, we've done a project for Vodafone recently, which has got Alexa and a bunch of unique skills on board, on our TLC, which is our telco package, which I can touch upon later on the presentation. That didn't need Wi-Fi because, the device, the extender from Vodafone has already got Wi-Fi on board. So depending on what the brand wants, we have a customized module that can, we either have a standard module, but we can depopulate depending on, what's required. But typically you have amps on board. If it's a speaker, you'll have drivers on board. You either decide whether it's an internal power supply or external. And we also work very closely with the installers, room services and things like that, because a lot of our products are built into, homes these days. Speakers get built into ceilings. Control pads get built into walls. And so you've got to make sure that you're not duplicating features in the system to, just to have it, because, price is important. We're being constantly pushed by our brands and customers that, every cent counts on a product. So we've got to make sure that we don't overload it with features and specifications just for the sake of it, but it needs to have everything in there that the brand requires. Actually, that leads me quite well onto our kind of applications and solutions overview. So we're kind of talking about, and on the left-hand side of our presentation, we've got our kind of our performance module at the top, which is our LS10 and LS11, going all the way down to our Mavid, the smallest form factor at the bottom. And this just gives you an idea of what the features are, what the ecosystems we support, and then what some of the end applications are. And a good example, the LS10 and 11. The LS10 is our top level service, a module rather. It's AirPlay, it's Cast, it's Alexa, it's Spotify, it's Roon, it's Deezer, it's all of those services. But LS11 is exactly that, but it also then supports Wi-Fi 6. So you get a lot of brands, and we've got a lot of Scandinavian customers who do high-end audio products, amplifiers and speakers that want to support Wi-Fi 6 for that speed, that functionality, and to ensure that they're getting the best possible service.
I've got a question. In terms of audio streaming, I'm always curious, what's the driving force or advantage from just using Bluetooth off your phone?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And, look, Bluetooth is an absolutely fantastic streaming device, protocol rather. But if you're streaming from your phone, Bluetooth your speaker, and you've got friends over, and if somebody suddenly calls me, the party stops, the music stops, and that's initially the most obvious. And a few years ago you would have said the bit rate's a little bit low, and but that's coming up, and you're getting better quality with Bluetooth, without a doubt. But I think I think there are different protocols and different solutions for different applications, and it's knowing what's what. So I think when it comes to proper audio streaming, you want something a little bit more robust, and Wi-Fi is probably a better solution. Bluetooth has its place, but again, if you're doing a multi-room setup, you wouldn't want to use Bluetooth for that. So it's understanding what, there are, there are other solutions on the market that use slightly different, bandwidths, and that works well. It all depends on what the application is, but typically for speakers and audio products, you'd use Wi-Fi, and you can use Bluetooth and LE and DEC, for example. I mean, we do a lot of DEC devices, which is another protocol, using DEC solutions. So it depends what the application is.
Yeah, I can imagine for a home theater system or amplifier system where you've got a bit of a UI, there's a very good use case because you can just press play on that and cycle your playlists or whatever easily. For headphones, I'm a bit more curious. I can see benefit if you are downloading the content into the phone, like Spotify may allow, into the headphones, and then you don't need to take anything, you just play.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think, it all comes down to, but there are great applications. Bluetooth is fantastic. You've got, you're on a plane with somebody and you've got two wireless headphones, and you can both stream, content from that tablet or from that device directly to both headphones. So there are, also, Bluetooth used to be a lot cheaper. I think the price gap between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi is reducing now, and you can do a lot more with Wi-Fi. And, as you say, it's not just all, there's data there, and, there are services, and we're more and more connected products coming to the market. Going to what Amazon have done with the Dash over the years. This is a really cheap little device that sits by your washing machine. You press a button if you're running out of washing powder, and literally everything is becoming connected. And that is why I think you can still have Wi-Fi, but you can have it in a really small package and a low-cost package, and that's exactly what Mavid is. And Mavid, we have in this presentation, we'll talk more and more about Mavid. Mavid really is I think it's the defining, the latest, kind of solution that will be pushing forward, because it's a small footprint, it's certainly a lower cost, and you can have it because it's all about machine learning. It's about getting data. It's not just audio, it's what you can do with that device. There are so many use cases where you need to have that that access to the cloud to be able to do things, and I've got some really good examples of that further on in the presentation. What I'll do, we've kind of, this slide here just really captures about LS10, but we've kind of talked about that, so I'll move on to the next slide. We at Libra, we did something really quite exciting about 18 months ago. We were kind of like the first module manufacturer to create kind of we call it the world's first kind of concurrent multi-room streaming endpoint. Effectively, it's our one module that can just capture and pretty much stream all of the main services in the ecosystem without the need. You had a lot of brands doing their own multi-room, and we kind of gave up on that probably about two and a half years ago, because we saw what Google were doing, what Amazon and what Apple were doing in this space. And we found it, it became quite convoluted and repetitive. And now we work so closely with the ecosystem, the actual ecosystems, multi-room services, which is perfect because you don't want to have multiple apps on your phone. One to set up the product and one to stream a bit of Apple Music, and you want to be able to connect the product really quickly. You want to be able to, if you're an Apple user, you want to be able to, use your Apple phone, your iPhone rather, to set up AirPlay and the music, and the same applies for Google. So I think it's really important to work with these players, the big players, and support there. And we see it as we're a complementary service, to the likes of Wearable and Sirius FM and Tidal and Pandora and Google and iHeart. The list is endless, and to be able to support them all, is really important for us. Mm. This slide here really just talks about LS11, which is our step up from LS10. As I said, the only difference really is it supports Wi-Fi 6. So I don't need to go into much more on that. So Mavid, so as I mentioned before, Mavid is our latest solution, which we introduced about 2.5, 3 years ago. And for those viewers, listeners who are watching the screen, you can see the size of it on this slide here, and it gives you it's 11 mils, and it sits on your finger, and it really is a tiny little solution. And Mavid stands for our kind of motor protocol audio voice IoT device, and that's exactly what it does. It supports all of the streaming, so everything that we were talking about earlier, but also AI and MI, which is really important. As we said, more and more devices are becoming connected. And it's not just your high-end devices. It's there are situations where you need to control lights, where you need to you're busy doing something with your baby, and you want to ask Alexa or what something is. Is this temperature correct for my baby, or should I know something about that, or to play a bit of lullaby music for her, or we've got a sensor in we've done sensors for babies' cots, and that data then gets passed on, and there are so many instances where you want to share data and where that becomes important in everyday life. And so Mavid really is the vehicle for that, and I think over the next few years we'll really see connected devices getting smaller and smaller and being in everything.
And speaking of smaller, I believe on the Mavid, is it not that you have the shielding on the encapsulation of the IC? So it's actually it's like you don't need a shield can on top of that. So basically what I'm getting to is the compactness and the ease of manufacturing. So like it's got a proper substrate so that it's properly grounded and it's easy to surface mount as a complete solution.
Right.
Whereas I think with some of these older modules where you've got an antenna sticking out somewhere and there's a shield can on there, it's a little bulky. So getting into compactness is a kind of a really cool thing, because I kind of remember when the old guy from Libre showed me the first Mavid, he had this little chip in his palm of his hand, and it was literally, I go, okay. And he goes, that's it. That's everything. And he was very happy to announce that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Look, I mean, technology's advanced over the years, and and our solutions have got smaller and smaller, which is fantastic, and and that's just fantastic progression, and that's how it goes. And yes, you do have to have shielding depending on antenna placements, and that goes back to the conversation we were having earlier. This is this isn't trivial, this technology. This is quite complex, and placing antennas is really important, because you've only got to, if it doesn't work in a complete 360-degree environment, wherever you put it in your home, you're going to get the user that's going to send that product back immediately. It has to work every single time. And so you can change the placement of antenna by 1 or 2 mils and millimeters, and that will determine whether the product works or not. So it's vital. And you have noise, and hence why you've got to have the shields on the modules. And but as I said, as more advancements, we're looking at better and cheaper ways of developing and integrating our solutions.
Okay.
So, I mean, this Mavid here really just talks about, I mean, we effectively got 2 flavors of Mavid. We got our Mavid Voice, and we got our Mavid 3M. And our Mavid Voice, actually, I'll start off on Mavid 3M. So effectively, this is a chip that does everything that you'd expect to, but it doesn't support voice control. This is more where you just have to kind of move data around. You could be moving away from audio in an IoT environment. You could be in a warehouse and you're stacking pallets, and you want to be able to know. And as soon as a pallet, you could have a Mavid 3M, integrated into the pallet, so it knows exactly where it is. And you've got all these smart warehouses these days where the goods are actually, everyone knows where the goods are. And we're working with a luggage company at the moment of integrating Mavid into the luggage tag, so that it knows exactly where it is at any given time. Not only does the airline know where the bag is, but then the passenger who's traveling knows exactly where their bag is. And so I think it's really important, and it will last for 300 journeys, because there's got to be enough power on board before it has to be recharged. So I think there are so many different examples in the ecosystem where you need to have this connectivity. where it's really important. And we're all seeing what Amazon's doing with pop-up shops and not necessarily having to pay. You literally pick up your goods and you walk out. That's what this is about. That's what Mavid 3M is about. It's controlling devices and sharing that data across the various platforms. This goes into a little bit of detail on the specifications of Mavid, our 3M module. I mean, I won't, viewers can take a capture of these, listeners to this can see this and take notes on this. And I believe the presentation will be available for download if anyone wants to access this. This is a good use case for Mavid 3M. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is a sharp neckband speaker, which we launched, I think it was the end of last year, or Sharp launched the end of last year, which we worked on with them, and it just kind of rests on the neck, and it supports AVS, Amazon Voice Services, and you can ask it what to do, and it can go off and play music, and you can ask questions, and again, this is the perfect companion for being out and about. And this is just one example in the audio space of where Mavid 3M works. So Mavid Voice is slightly different to that. So Mavid Voice, again, it's allows you to ask questions, but also not necessarily. Actually, I forgot one of the key points about Mavid 3M. Actually, is that not only does it work with connected to the cloud, but it also works offline. So this is really important. It doesn't actually need a cloud. It can be local voice. And this is quite important. You're in your house and you want to switch on your air conditioning. You can just, ask it, and it doesn't have to go to the cloud and come back. And, because there's still a lot of issues with privacy, and there's, people are worried about, whether their voices are being recorded, etc. There are good examples of how that doesn't work, and I won't go into that now. And you can search on the Amazon websites and Googles of this world, and they can explain how that actually works and how it doesn't record, etc. But for the purposes of today, the great thing about Mavid is that we do support this localized voice, so you can create. It doesn't have to be you could have that wake word, could be anything. It could be hey David, hey Simon, you can literally, whatever you want it to be, you can create that. So if whatever your name of your company is, you can do that. And, that's a pretty easy thing to set up. And, we can switch on air conditioning units. We can turn hot water on. You can fill the bath up. And there are so many things that you can ask your product to do, which you're just not able to, and they're not, a lot of people think these are gimmicks, but if you're working in a hospital, for example, and you're taking a patient's temperature or whatever, and you suddenly need a bit more information, you can ask that question. And because it's localized, it's super quick. You can get that response very, very quickly. So I think, there are so many use cases where maybe voice and local wake words are really important. Again, this just goes through a little bit of the specifications on Mavid Voice here, which you can get after the show, and a few use cases of what. And we talked about these switching on fans, air conditioning units in luggage. We did a project about 18 months ago with a leading coffee machine company, and where you're running out of coffee capsules and you can order new capsules whilst it will in fact tell you that you've run out of capsules, and then you can order them online from the store.
Wow.
We touched earlier about what we were doing in the telco space, and we've done a few projects and some quite interesting projects. I mean, we worked last year, probably a little bit longer now, just for the pandemic, with a leading brand in Germany. I think they're allowing us to say who it is, but it's a company called Siemens and Gigaset, where we put in one of our modules, the LS9, into, so anyone who's seeing this at the moment, it's the speaker on the right. It's effectively an Alexa speaker, but it's also a deck speaker. So it connects to your deck telephone in your house, and you can receive and make calls from it. And it connects to your address book, either on your mobile phone or your deck device, and you can answer in calls. So that's really interesting and worked very well for that brand. The product, the next part of this, goes on a little bit more about, so, you can have skills in here, and you can tell you, how many people are calling and emergency calls, and DEC is still quite important. So that's interesting for this platform. We also work quite closely with Vodafone, and we are integrated into the Vodafone Pro, which is an extender, which accompanies the Vodafone broadband, which effectively allows, there's some very unique features in here, but effectively it's an extender for their network with Alexa built into it. And, you can ask it any questions. It also has self-diagnosis. So you can ask how fast your broadband speed is, if there's a problem with it. It can tell you what's wrong with it. And then a pretty neat feature that we work very closely with Vodafone is called Dinnertime Skills. So effectively, let's say, for example, you want to set dinner time between 7 and 8 p.m. You can, you can say, enable dinner time, and it switches off certain devices. So little Johnny or Jack or whoever's got their phone at the dinner table suddenly can't use it. So, which is quite cute. And that works really well, because I think we've got to, as organizations, as Vodafone is and as we are at Libre, it's really important that these devices are used appropriately. And and I think a lot of families don't want their kids on, and anyone who's got teenagers knows that they're constantly on their phones listening to music or doing social media, and and to be able to have some clever skills that stop you from doing that is great. So
that would be yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I know with some of the telcos, there was a lot of discussion in the US is why don't they have that block for the drivers of cars? So they can't operate their phone while driving. And it's, there was some, we don't need to go into it, but there's something about the phone companies didn't want anybody messing with their data that they were selling, which is kind of sick that it's more important than safe driving. But anyways, I digress.
Well, there are more and more smart cars, electric cars coming to the self-driving cars. I'm sure there's a bunch of functionalities in there and features that are going to change. And and that's a really classic case. We've done work with some car companies, and our little Mavid, where it connects up to where you can then stream content directly to your car stereo as well. And so there are so many use cases for these devices these days. So that was Vodafone. And actually, funny enough, that leads us really well onto security. And and in this day and age, it's really important that we take all our customer security and data with the utmost importance, and all our devices, everything is certified appropriately and conforms to all the ecosystem security measures. And that's a given. So we have our own team that work solely on that. And then also cloud, we kind of touched upon this earlier, so Libre has our own cloud. And so, this is perfect for, the big brands who don't have necessary cloud, and they want us to work with ours. And also a lot of these custom brands where they want to have unique wake words and things, we can support that and host all of that at Libre. And we effectively do all that heavy lifting. So, we've got some well-known brands that have very small R&D teams, maybe less than 10 people in some instances, and we literally become the extension to their R&D team. We can, they can come to us with a product ID. We can, help them design the electronic package. We can do the schematics. We can then, do all the prototyping for them. We can even help them find factories. We have a selection of factories that we work really closely with that are integrated. That's, and a really good example that is Hansol Technologies, based in Nanjing. We work incredibly closely with them, and they know the solution very well, and it's all about time to market. It's about delivering product. We wouldn't be very good if it was going to take us 2 or 3 years to deliver a product. So we make sure we partner with some great factories such as Hansol, where they can turn products around with our solutions in it in less than a year and 8 months in some cases. And so I think that's really important, and is getting product out, because as a company we only make our money by selling modules. So it's in our interest to make sure our brands, our customers, get their product shipped out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so, you just mentioned Hansol, and are there other design houses that will implement Libre Wireless based, module based solution for you? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so we typically factories, that we have a portfolio of maybe a half a dozen to 8 factories that we work with on a very, I say factories, OEMs or ODMs that we work with very closely, that know our solution very well. And we don't work with so many design houses as in a software design house, because we do a lot of that in-house. We have a bunch of engineers, and we will do that. And, our customers will come to us and ask us what the projects are. And, then we will, work out, an SOW with them and how long it will take to develop that. And a good example of what we did with Vodafone. There was an ODM that we worked very closely with, but we did all the software skill for the Amazon skills. So not only did we provide the modules, the Alexa module for the device, but we did all the software application that did that. We also did the apps that for iOS and Android that work with that, and we did all the certification. So that the back end of it's really important, and there's a lot of work on the back end of it. So we will do all of that and manage all of that as well.
Yep. So a fairly complex system. Is it possible for someone to come along and say, I'll just buy the modules and go off and have a go at it myself, or you really need a depth of experience?
We tend, so this is where I become a kind of a sales prevention officer, and I kind of turn customers away. It's not in our interest to do that, only because it's quite complex, and we don't want to. The customers that we look for and we work with are brands and customers that are going to do reasonable volume. I think that's really important, because it does take time. It's a 6 month, it's an 8 month, it's in some cases it's a year to bring a product to market. And if a customer has a pet project that they want to do a few things for themselves, or 100 here or 100 there, we tend not to get involved in those projects. I mean, that said, we have in the past, there's a couple of high profile brands, European brands, that are owned by some even a very large organization, where they've got they do very high-end hi-fi amplifiers that sell for a lot of money, and they do a lot of the integration themselves. So we will in that instance sell the modules, and we'll offer a little bit of support. But it's a lot of support to do this. You may have 7 or 10 engineers working on a particular project, and if they're going to sell 100 amplifiers or 50 speakers, even if they're going to be $50,000 a speaker, it's a lot of work to tie up, because you can't suddenly charge a lot more for the module. The module price is the module price to an extent. So unfortunately, we have to choose who our customers are. But just going back to our key partners that we work with, so if we do have a customer that's going to be a small one, we will then push them to our preferred manufacturing partners, because they have platforms in place, and they're more geared up to working with small customers. And so and I mentioned Hanson before, but they're another really good example of that. Where we could where they will do they'll have a platform which can be put into multiple different brand products, and they have the expertise to do that, and that doesn't rely on our services and our resources too much.
Got it. And customers generally running their own system logic on the module, or do they have a separate MCU or processor for that?
So typically, so we're a Linux-based solution, our modules, and it depends. I mean, it depends whether it's going to be in master mode or slave mode, and in most cases they use our software, and then we customize our software to meet their requirements. We'll reskin our app to to give it a header and footer to look like that brand's app, and we will give it a fresh look and feel. But typically we do a lot of the integration. They may come to us and want certain, let's say, for example, equalizer settings, and, we can do that. And, they want their own language or their own settings. We can customize that entirely.
I'm talking in the sense of, let's say you're building a smart speaker and you've got various button inputs. You would just have the Libra Wireless module for that stuff? Or would you have a separate processor to handle the kind of button in?
So there are, so we've got, on our processors, we can handle a lot of a lot of commands, but it depends on what they want. Typically, we can pretty much drive the product, but it depends. If there's a CD player on board, if it's a Vodafone router, it's got a lot of things that that is outside our area. So we would work very closely with the brand to determine what portion that we would support and what they would support. And that's actually a good example of, this screen here just shows some of the brands that we've worked with over the years and that we continue to work with, from Pioneer, Polaroid, Hammer, NAD, Vodafone, Gigaset, Q Acoustic, to name but a few. And sorry for the ones I haven't called out on the presentation. But, our customer base really does, span the whole CE sector and more into the IoT sector now.
All right. Looks good.
And I think, that kind of captures what the essence of what Libre Wireless is all about.
All right.
Well, a couple of specifics. What are we talking in terms of power consumption at the low end for, say, audio streaming?
So we support low energy consumption, and we conform to the EU requirements and standby modes, and so obviously Wi-Fi modules are more hungry than than Bluetooth modules when it comes to power. But we've adopted some very clever kind of power saving modes which we work with, and we can get it down to some very low numbers. So
can you give any indicative figure?
It all depends on it all depends on what the solution is, what amps being used, what power consumption the drivers you're using. So I think there's a lot of variables involved. So I could give out a number, but it wouldn't actually mean anything because it's got to be in context to the actual platform.
Okay, then another one, which is in mind. What about Wi-Fi data rate?
So, our stream, what you mean in terms of, latency and things like that? Is that what you mean? Or
no, actually, just download speed, data rate for
yeah. So again, so that's actually not determined by us. That's more determined by your Wi-Fi connection. So we're only as good as your Wi-Fi provider. We could have the best module, and we can support Wi-Fi 6, for example. But if you've got a really ropey Wi-Fi connection and you haven't got a good signal, then we're only going to be as good as that. And it depends on how many devices you've got streaming on the network. So again,
let me frame it slightly differently. So in another project, had some experience with the ESP32, fantastic Wi-Fi, but it actually only is capable of maybe 1 megabits or 500 kilobits data rate.
So we don't do video, so our modules, wouldn't support video, streaming where you actually need, much better. But for audio, we achieve incredibly low latency, lip sync, we support. So, we don't have an issue with that. But again, it goes back to the environment. Our module is one part of that. And there are quite a few variables to determine, exactly the performance that you get from the product.
Is that expected, like the convergence of audio and video to come? Like, I mean, a lot of people will use their TV as their entertainment center now rather than having a receiver. Or is it on the horizon perhaps to see video coming?
That's a really good question, and and the amount of times I've kind of had these conversations over the past kind of 10, 15 years, and so I would say yes and no. And I know, so I think there's always going to be a place, without a doubt, it's all about streaming content, whether that be video, whether that be audio. Mm-hmm. And I think, we as an organization at Libre, we focus very much on the audio side of the solution. So for that, that's where we're more, our expertise lies. As soon as you start wanting to stream video more, it starts encroaching. All of a sudden, are you becoming a tablet? Are you becoming a phone? And effectively, that's what the device is. And the competition's a lot more fierce in that space. And when on the IoT side of things and the audio, this is where we find it most appropriate. And our customer base is really large. I mean, you've got only a few players when it comes to devices, video devices, and I think the use cases are a lot. It's a different customer base and it's a different use case. You've got the mobile operators who tend to focus more on the video side of things, and that's not our area of expertise. And so, as much as yes, there's convergence there, for us, we have no plans in our roadmap to suddenly start supporting video.
Okay, but yeah, there's a lot of endpoints available in IoT devices, especially with white goods and coffee machines, as you mentioned.
Exactly,
it's an endless market almost. So. That's exciting stuff. Simon, did you have any further questions?
I think I might have covered it, actually. Yeah.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody watching, we're going to put a link down below for the presentation. You guys all want to dig in a little bit deeper, and there's a bit of detail in there that you might, if you want to, you might want to download it and read it. So encourage people to do that. Encourage, of course, everybody to like, subscribe, and share the video. And thanks for watching. So have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.